Hi, I'm Chanel. Welcome to the Piper Nell podcast. I'm a college student studying physics in Claremont, California, which is in the Los Angeles area. So I am in sunny California. It's really warm. You can see I'm wearing short sleeves. Um, it's also how I'm looking at the thermostat. 71 degrees right now. So thank you for spending some time with me. Um, so returning viewers, which I'm still surprised that there are some. Thank you. May notice the new intro song because I had some paranoia about copyright issues, and I mean that band isn't terribly mainstream, but and I really like that song, but you never know. YouTube can be fussy. All right, big announcement. Last housekeeping item before I go into the meat of the knitting. So I made a Ravelry group last week. So if that's your thing and you like your podcast to come with a bit of chatter and community, then head over to the Ravelry group. It's called the Piper Nell Podcast, and I'd love to meet you. I've started an introduction thread. I'm gonna put show notes up there, so please come socialize. I would love to get conversations going. Like, who are you people? So, if you got questions for me, you can post them there. And please feel free to start your own threads. So yeah, I will put link down here. All right. So, on to knitting. First, finished objects. I have my first hand spun yarn. This, I'm going to talk more about where I made this later in kind of the video blog portion. But here it is. It's really lumpy. It's really uneven. But I used a drop spindle, and so this past weekend there was a spinning workshop which I helped organize. I didn't run the workshop because obviously I'm not a very experienced spinner. One of my friends taught the workshop, and we had a bunch of wool, and she taught us how to use drop spindles, and I made this yarn. So this is my first ever attempt at spinning anything with a spindle. So I spun a single, and then I was crazy enough to attempt to ply it. So I took it off the spindle, wound it into a center pole ball, which I do a lot with normal yarns. And then I plied it by spinning it like in the opposite direction, which is the way she vaguely described it to me. She herself had never tried it, and we were like, hey, it's a learning experience, the both of us. All right, so that's it. My only other finished object, FO, is my lighter BAMF sweater, which I've been showing, and I don't have it anymore. I've given it to my friend that I made it for. So I'm going to put in some pictures after I finish reading off my details off the show notes. So the yarn was knit 1, crochet 2, creme brulee, which is a DK weight in 100% superwash merino. It was super soft, and the colorway, it was beige, and it only took 6.5 balls. Each ball was about 200 yards. No, not 200, like 150. So she's a pretty small person. So you didn't need that much yarn to make a sweater for her. I made it on US 5 or 3.75 millimeter needles using Chowgu red lace. I love those needles. All right, so I am going to cut in those pictures here. You're going to hear some music, and then after the music is back, after the music, I'll be back with some works in progress. All right, works in progress. Whips. It's kind of funny to say whips. Shutting up. So first up is my Mai Tai cowl. Last time I just started it, and as you can see here, I've made quite a bit of progress. Sorry for the needle dragging across my desk. And I've gotten quite a few repeats. I am on the second ball of yarn here, which I've joined. So I got about 6 repeats. You can see by the little cable thingamabobs. So 6 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, there are 6 on the screen right now. 6 of them were 1 ball of yarn, and the yarn is Lion Brand Woolies, worsted weight in the color cranberry, and it's, you probably know Woolies. It's an acrylic wool blend. I use it a lot for my projects because it's machine washable, it's durable, it's pretty soft. It only gets softer with washing, and it's good for when my friends request knits from me. Then it's nice and easy to take care of. I don't believe in giving things to people that is hard to take care of, because then it's more of a burden than it is a gift. Anyway, the pattern is Mai Tai by Thea Coleman, who also goes by Baby Cocktails on Ravelry. And all of this information, I'm trying to get better about this, I'm still new to this, is going to be in the show notes on the Ravelry group, which you should join. Again, just going to remind you, join the Ravelry group. Talk to me. That's whip number 1. Going to put it away. No clattering. My second whip is a Wheaton scarf. The pattern is Wheaton, of course, by Anne Hansen. It's a super pretty lace and cable pattern. Get the needle here. Clanging, clanging, clanging. I'm going to try to spread this out, since this is definitely going to need some blocking. But you can see you have this really pretty leafy cable motif, and it's just repeated over and over. And I skipped the ribbing called for in the pattern, because I'm going to knit a length about, how long do I want to make it? About 5 feet, 60 inches. How many centimeters is that? Sorry, I'm not great at converting. And then graft the ends into a loop scarf. This is also a request from a friend who, infinity scarves really are trending right now, and I haven't made a lot of straight scarves because that's not what people want from me. The yarn is Knit Picks City Tweed, which is a DK weight. It's like, what is it? An alpaca wool. There's some nylon in there blend, and it's tweedy, so you can see the little nups in there. It's really soft. I really like working with the tweed, and I think it blends pretty well with the lace pattern. The color is obsidian. I think I called it charcoal like last episode. I'm bad at these grays. All of these grays. I love gray, by the way. You've seen. I'm wearing gray right now. I think I was wearing gray last episode. All right, and I am knitting it with US 7 or 4.5 millimeter needles. Also, Chaogu. Actually, not Chaogu lace. It's the knit red, but it's still the same red cable. The only difference is that the tips are less pointy. I don't like it as much. I wish I had bought the the red lace needles in this size, but it's fine. The tips are still pretty pointy. I just like pointy tips a lot. There's also something weird about this needle, is that it is bent here. I don't know if that's supposed to make it more ergonomic. If you have any insight into that, I would love to hear it. I don't find it super ergonomic. I guess the way I hold the needles, it does fit into, I don't know, where my finger curves in. Does it give me, maybe it gives me more leverage? No. No, that's not it. Like, if it was straight, then you could, my pinky could press, I don't know. Over analyzing it too much. All right. Next, next whip. So I'm deciding to continue a bit with the spinning at least, because there was a lot of wool at our spinning workshop, and so I took home a bunch, not a bunch, like little bag. I don't know how many ounces, and I borrowed a spindle from our supply stash, and now I'm working on this. You can still see the price tag on the spindle. Yeah, we have these spindles on loan from where we got the rest of the supplies, but I I like the feel of this. I haven't tried enough spindles to know if it's, an objectively good spindle, but I would consider buying this. This is kind of a mystery fiber because for the workshop we got the wool, and it wasn't just wool. We had some, it was a bunch of assorted fiber. There was some camel in there, some alpaca. I will talk more about that later and why it was all mixed up. So I really like the color of this. This was dyed like a pink purple, and I'm still getting the hang of this. This is way different from spinning my first yarn. I don't know what kind of wool this was, but is a much like, kinkier fiber. This yarn turned out really fluffy and squishy. I don't know what I'll make with this, by the way. Maybe some sort of like really like rustic hand spun like placemat, or I don't know how much yardage is in this whatsoever. But this is almost certainly some sort of merino, according to my friend who ran the workshop. And so the fibers, they're really long, they're really soft, they're also like really slippery. And I don't know how much of that is due to preparation versus just the way merino fibers behave. So yeah, that's spinning. I don't know how regular spinning will be in my crafts, but it's really fun. I don't find it as not mindless as it's relaxing. It's definitely relaxing, but I don't. And I definitely. Oh, there's that whole thing like I have to stand up. I can't sit while doing it, and it's not as easy for me to like watch TV, or I can depending on the pattern I'm knitting, I can read while some pretty like heavy involved reading while knitting, but I definitely can't read while spinning. All right. Do I have any more works in progress? Oh, so some stuff I've shown on previous episodes will not be making an appearance. One is my naked gardening shawl. I didn't show this last episode, and I won't be showing it again because it's still in timeout. I see it right there. It's right there. I mean, I'm blaming it for my mistakes. I made some sort of mistake and the stitch count was off, and I was about to switch to the next section that the pattern calls for, and my stitch count's off. So when I tried the first row of the new like lacy section that I was about to start, it didn't work. So it's been in the timeout corner until I can get that mental fortitude to I guess unravel a few rows, or I don't know, figure out where to put some increases or decreases to get me to the right stitch count. I am definitely not a perfectionist with my knitting. I will improvise and do whatever it takes to at least like get something of a passable finished object. But that is just I don't know what's up. Anyway, and something else I've shown that won't be appearing this week is the community spiral blanket, which is from last episode. I haven't made much progress on it. I think it'd be kind of cumbersome to show. You remember the fiasco of me flopping everywhere and the blanket going blah. So yeah, I'll show that once in a while, or maybe when I have a major milestone, like I finished another round. It should just be a couple more rounds, and then I'm going to finish it. So I'll definitely show the finished blanket. No more works in progress. That's it for that. Pre-needles, as in new yarn, needle adjacent projects. I don't have anything new. So the wheaten scarf made its way from pre-needles to on the needles to a work in progress. For the other yarns, I haven't really had the time to cast on anything. I have the yarn that the skein of sock yarn. Sorry, I can't talk right now. I have the skein of sock yarn that I showed last time, wound up by hand, by the way. I love winding yarn by hand. You might find it incredibly weird, but it's really relaxing for me, and I'm not in any rush really, so I'm fine doing it. But I was thinking, so I bought this yarn because I was so excited about finding an indie dyed yarn for a good D-stash price, and I wanted to make socks with a really variegated yarn because I've seen, various sock knitters. Mina of the Knitting Expat podcast during her January Sockathon had a lot of cool self-striping and variegated yarns. And I love the colors in this. However, it's 100% merino and no nylon. So I know I can make a sturdier fabric if I knit with a tighter gauge. My gauge has definitely loosened over the past couple months, and no specific reason, I bet. Gauge is one of those things that happens. And my smallest sock needles are US ones, and US size 1, 2.25 millimeter needles. So it's been a while since I've knit socks, and I am worried about my looser gauge, so I'm thinking of ordering some maybe US 0. I don't know what millimeter how many millimeters that is. Some US 0 needles, or maybe 00, and first swatch before I leap into these socks, because I want a nice, dense, sturdy fabric so that the 100% merino doesn't, wear out too quickly. Not that I would be very hard wearing on my socks. I have a lot of socks, so I don't wear a single pair of socks too often. Anyway, that's all I have for knitting. It's not as much as last week because I was in relatively good health, as well as I could be while struggling with school. So on to the video blog section. I'm gonna scroll down to my notes here. Life. Oh man, life. So the saying around here is that at this point in the semester, you know what kind of semester you're in for, because it's midterms round 1. Don't ask me why there are multiple rounds of midterms. There isn't more than one middle of a term, but you know what? Professors don't think like normal people. So yeah, I have a couple of papers out. But exciting things that happened within the past 2 weeks were, one was Parents' Weekend. So my parents came and visited me 2 weekends ago. They drove down to Claremont from Las Vegas. It's not too bad of a drive. Most people do it in about 4 hours. 5 if you really take your time and like take nice rest. Kind of spend some time at the rest stops, eat lunch, and at a leisurely pace. You can really, if you really floor it and power through, you can do it in 3. I've been in someone's car, and she was flying down the I-15 at like 90 miles an hour the entire way, and she made it in just under 3 hours between the Los Angeles area and Las Vegas. It was crazy. It was high school. Sorry, I'm also kind of phlegmy. I think seasonal allergies are beginning to kick in. So it was high school. There was a dance competition. I did Chinese folk dance for a while, and I was carpooling with one of my friends' moms. And so it was after the award ceremony, it's like 9 at night. We want to get back to the competition was in the Los Angeles area, and we wanted to get back to Vegas and get home because it was actually a school night, like Sunday night and Monday morning. We'd all have to wake up super early for school. So she just books it. She just goes and just have this like little Chinese lady in her mom van flying down the highway. It was great. So fast. Anyway, so my parents took me out for food. It was great. They always feed me so much. They brought me, okay, they didn't just bring me one cooler of food. Since they drove, my mom takes full advantage of of their car's big huge trunk, and she packs two coolers of food. I was like, why, Mom? Why? How am I gonna fit all of this food in my fridge? Okay. Problems. Struggles. Anyway, so that was good. And they actually visited the next weekend because the next weekend, again, what I was surprised that they were willing to head down 2 weekends in a row. I had orchestra concert weekend this most recent weekend. And so they drove down again. I had originally, so I'm in the Pomona College Orchestra. I play violin. And I wanted them to come to one of my concerts this semester because it's my last semester. And I was like, hey, you should see what a college orchestra is like. They went to some of my high school orchestra concerts. They weren't super big fan, but high school orchestras don't get to play very exciting music. So I mentioned just kind of offhand that our second concert of the spring semester is always with the choir. So we play some huge choral piece. We're actually playing the Brahms Requiem for that concert. And then our sorry, I said third because we have two in the previous semester. So our first concert of the spring semester is, I said it was more of an exciting program because we play with the winner of a concerto concert. So, you have a super cool soloist, super good student soloist, and that's always a big draw. And we have more freedom in choosing the pieces because we're not bound by the constraint of you have to choose a piece that not only is good for an orchestra, you also have to choose a piece that's good for a choir. The intersection of those two areas is just smaller. So I mentioned that, and then my mom is she's not a super big fan of classical music. She gets really bored at concerts, so she's like, all right, we're going to the one that I will be less bored at. I'm like, okay, Mom, okay. I've been doing that a lot. You might wonder what my dad's like. My dad's just like, okay, honey, okay, let's go, let's drive. So, we performed the overture to Beethoven's Leonore opera, which I want to hear more about because all my friends were like, "Oh my God, this opera is super feminist. It's like a wife, she goes and rescues her husband." I want to learn more about that. Like, what was going on with Beethoven, like that he wrote that? I don't know. And then our second piece, this was the winner of the concerto competition. Not a concerto, but it was still a piece with a soloist and orchestra accompaniment, was Chanson's poem, which is a super pretty, like ethereal, kind of ghostly piece. It's very lyrical. It's not one of those violin solos that's full of super fast notes and like what's the word, virtuosic playing. It was very much focused on the soloist's musical capabilities, her lyricism. She's an amazing player. And so I really like that piece, in case you can't tell. And their last piece was Prokofiev's Seventh Symphony, his last one. And I think the best way to describe it, as one of my friends said, is a carousel gone off the rails. And it's kind of this madhouse at times. It's kind of a creepy, dead, spooky vibe at times. It's a cool piece. It's long though. And because it was the last in our program, I think everyone was exhausted by the end. I had looked up, so my parents were in the balcony seating section, and I looked up and they had dozed off at one point towards the end of the Prokofiev. Just like, my parents. Right. Are actually, pretty related to my craft in knitting. So I've mentioned a spinning workshop, so I'm going to talk about it in more detail now. The spinning workshop is an event I organized for the art club that I help run at school. The club is called the Mud Underground Creative Collective, MUCC, which we pronounce muck. And it's I think at its heart, we are an art collective. We try to foster a community among creative students and really get people to practice their crafts, not just as a hobby, but really try to incorporate it into our lives here at Harvey Mudd, which is, a science and math and tech focused school. And where do we fit in? Do we identify as artists? How do we fit our interests in art into our education? That's really been a theme with me this semester. And I guess really it's factored into how I'm thinking about what I'm doing after graduation. So yeah, I organized a spinning workshop with one of my friends. Her name's Hannah. And her mom she's actually the daughter of Kate Painter, who established Paradise Fibers, which, some of you might have bought fiber from. I've definitely heard it on podcasts like Andy's podcast, Andre Sunitz, and she's mentioned buying things from Paradise Fiber. So over winter break, I worked out with Hannah kind of the costs of the workshop. Her mom, since she sold Paradise Fibers to their current owners, she still has some inventory left, and she keeps an Etsy shop. I'll link the Etsy shop in the show notes. And so she sent us a big, huge bag of fiber. Most of it, she said, was kind of like practice wool, not like kind of coarser, lumpier stuff. And then there was some like more fun, nicer fibers. And so when Hannah came back, I don't know if she drove or if she flew, because they're over in somewhere on the East Coast. She came back with this huge Ziploc tote of wool. There was a box of spindles. Most of them we bought kind of the cheap $3 spindles, which is just a dowel and a plastic disc which is good for beginners. And then the bag also included these nicer spindles, which I borrowed one of, which are on loan from her mom, Kate. And though we have the option of buying this at a later date. So yeah, that was a good afternoon. It was actually just this Sunday. We met in one of the common areas around campus, which we have a living room area, and we went to that's called in a building called Platt, and we went to a study room there so we could have some privacy. And I'm kind of annoyed. I put up a Facebook event on the Muck Facebook page, and 13 people said they were definitely coming to the event. They RSVP, check that thing. There were 7 people that said they were interested. Only 2 showed up. I'm just like, guys, come on, don't be flakes. But it's all right. I'm sorry. If any of you are watching, no hard feelings. I know everyone's busy at school, so I hope you can make it at a later point to just try out the leftover supplies, which I'll get to later. So, yeah. Right, that was super fun. And it was a good, Sunday afternoon study break. Though I did have to rush off early because I had to go to, that same afternoon we had a concert. It was an orchestra concert, so I had to rush off a little early and worry about, like, oh, hey, friend, can you help me, like, carry this big bag of wool back to my dorm? Yeah. So we put the leftover supplies after a short period of just having a big bag of wool sitting in my suite. Actually, it was sitting in my suite for a long time. Right after winter break, that's where it first lived, and it was just this bag of wool in my living room area. I live in a suite, so right outside that door is kind of a living room common area. And it was just sitting outside my door, and people were like, "What is this bag? I didn't know Ziploc bags came in this size." Right. Um, so now it has a much better home. We something else that's new this year at Harvey Mudd is that we have a makerspace that's starting up. And so a makerspace is kind of exactly what it says on the tin. It's a it's a facility. It's in this case it's a large room with a bunch of equipment like power tools. Ours doesn't have a 3D printer, but there are a lot of these maker spaces around the country as part of the maker movement, which ours has a sewing machine, a bunch of supplies like glue, I want to say there's a soldering iron, a huge toolkit, just a bunch of things for people who identify as makers, like whether you make electronics or if you're in some sort of like fibercraft or like textiles. You have this space, this communal space to practice and hone your skills. And I am super excited that Mudd is getting one because I think it can definitely be something different. So I mentioned the kind of I mentioned fiber art in these maker spaces, but that's actually not my sense and experience with these maker spaces. I once stopped by one back home in Las Vegas, and it was very, hobby electronics focused. And of course, these crafts are, that's a very specific audience. These crafts are gendered. Like, you look at fiber artists, they're, mostly women, and it's mostly guys who do hobby electronics. It's a very they can get very tech bro-y. I want to say that. I use that phrase. If you don't know what that means, I'm definitely open to talking about it more. And so Makerspace was first started by another club on campus called Fab Studio, and they are centered on these these electronic projects, machining, all sorts of really cool things. And I think the Makerspace at Mudd with collaboration between our two organizations, Fab Studio and Muck, we can make our makerspace, kind of a different, more inclusive community of many different kinds of makers and encourage some really cool creations at the school. So we moved the bag of wool in there so people can kind of, not all students, but students can pretty easily get access to the makerspace room and swipe in, and so they can access all these supplies. We moved the paper, various markers, coloring supplies, a crochet hook kit. So not a sewing kit, they had one. A knitting needle set into the makerspace too, because we've kind of accumulated these over the years, and I've been searching for a place that would make these supplies accessible to students and not be a huge barrier, somewhere obscure, somewhere out of the way. So I'm really looking forward to how this makerspace will develop. And that's all I have for life updates. Next is on my radar. So first, with knitting podcasts that I've been watching my usual, but some new ones that I wanted to mention that I've started. They've been going on for a little bit already, and I'm just late to the party as usual. I live under a very big rock. So I finally checked out the Sticks Plus Twine podcast, which is by Eric. So hey, if you're watching this, hi. So I'm always glad to find Eric's kind of someone who offers a different perspective on knitting. As you can probably guess, Eric is a man, so not many male podcasters out there, and it's nice to get he's also a geek like me, and his latest episode was very sweet. It was the theme was gratitude, and so he gave thanks to all of his viewers and stuff, and then he also mentioned um, he touched on some things with mental health, which resonated with me. And at some point, I will talk about my experiences with mental health, since I am diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and that's been a huge part of my college experience, and really shaping the way I approach the world and view myself and how I'm going to move into the future, which is, the big point of of me sitting in front of a camera and talking. So, the next one I want to mention is Knitting I Love by Barbara in, sorry, you live in Ireland. Hi, Barbara. So, she commented on one of my Instagram pictures, and so I went to check out her podcast. She's super bubbly, and she has some really great color choices, so check her out. And then the next one, I'm super late to the party here. I finally caved and started watching the Bakery Bears podcast by Kay and Dan Jones. I don't know what took me so long. I think it was because of the long episodes, and I'm like, how am I gonna watch all of this? I've been watching their episodes in pieces. They are a married couple, and I just love listening to their banter. It's so adorable. So, also, they have some great editing. I think Dan works in video production, so right now, what they have going on is the Knit or Forfeit games, where they'll bring in another podcaster, and kind of face off in a game show style. Um, I ran out of time, and now I have 6 minutes. Anyway, all right. Kay and Dan Jones, Bakery Bears podcast. Yeah, love you guys. All right, wow. Now I feel time pressured. So, last thing I want to talk about that's on my radar is a book that I'm reading for a class. I'm not assigned to read it, but we have a midterm paper out. This is for my crafts and technology class, which is an art history class, and we talk about, different ways craft and technology have intersected throughout human history. So we've talked about glasswork, pottery, textiles. We even got into kind of the origin of computers, and I would really like to explore the idea of technology and inventing as a craft in itself within that class. So maybe that'll be something I'll try to work that into my final project. But anyway, we have a midterm paper out, and so the prompt for that is you choose an object or craft or something related to craft, and you research its history and trace its impact through society. So I chose the needle. I didn't get any more specific than that. I kind of approached it from an artist's methods, which our professor is also an artist, so I could see her thinking behind this project. So we went to the library as a class, and after a brief tutorial on like how their catalog system works, we searched up some books, and we were required to pick out 2 books, find them in the library stacks, and so check those out, but also take the one immediately to the left and immediately to the right. I just realized that's going to be mirrored in this video, and we had to check those out. So one of my books that worked out well because it was like in the art history section, and in among all of these other like textiles books and like needlework and stuff. And then my other book, it was in the kind of theory behind invention section, and it has this really great chapter on the evolution of the needle, how it went from a pointy stick to something with a hole at the end that you can use to pull thread through the hole that you made. And kind of the author approaches it with kind of the heuristics of how people thought of taking this pointy stick. Maybe they had so he called on an awl, AWL, and then you had a fork that pushed the thread through, and how were these two things combined? How did they evolve, and so on and so forth. I'm getting away from the point. This is the book that I wanted to talk about. One of the books I checked out. The title is, that's mirrored. Oh, wow. The title is Women and the Material Culture of Needlework and Textiles, edited by Maureen Daly Goggins, and Beth Folks Tobin. And it's a collection of essays that explore how needlework, not including embroidery, cross-stitch, lace making. There is one essay on knitting. I immediately read that, of course, quilting, and how it's been tied to women throughout history. And one essay is how embroidery samplers were an early form of they've been used as as kind of political, as means for political discourse in an acceptable way for a woman to kind of stitch her thoughts. There was one figure from Greek mythology, Philomela, or is that Roman? I'm not sure. Sorry. I would need to look at my notes for the reading. And so something happened to this woman where she had her tongue cut out, grizzly, so she couldn't speak. However, her the way she ended up getting her story out and exposing what the people that were tormenting her was. She embroidered a confession. So that's really cool. And then the essay about knitting is focused on wartime knitting in America and how that was linked to patriotism, and what did it enforce? Did it subvert women's roles at the time? Super cool book. I'm not sure, since I got it from an academic library, how available it will be, but you can definitely do an interlibrary loan at your local library. So that's all I have for this week. Wow, I feel like I talked a lot. We'll see how long this episode turns out. But thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Join the Ravelry group. And I'll see you again in June. Hope you have a great day.